All right, we will call this meeting of the Transportation Safety Commission to order. I always forget. We start with a roll call.
Thank you. Commissioner Griffith,
Present.
Commissioner Beaudry,
Present.
Commissioner Christensen,
Present.
Commissioner Edrington,
Present.
Commissioner Fitting Jr.,
Present.
Commissioner Gonzalez, here, and Commissioner Mueller. Thank you.
All right, our next order of business is approval of the minutes from the October 8th, 2024 meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Then I got a second. All right. Shanti? Yep. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? Cool. All right, and then we're on to public comment. This section of the meeting provides the public an opportunity to address the commission on any subject not appearing on the agenda. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the TSC cannot take any action on items that do not appear on the agenda. Any request that requires action will be set by the commission to a future agenda or will be referred to staff for review and action. Each person will be allowed 3 minutes to address the commission. Do we have folks here in person? Come on up. Do I need to turn the mic on as well, Jessica? Oh, hold on. Do that for you. You can stand up as tall as you are, Colin.
Fancy.
Yeah, right? I just learned how to do it.
Okay. I'm Colin Fisk. I'm the Executive Director of CRTP, the Coalition for Responsible Transportation Priorities. And I just wanted to let everyone know, if you don't already, that we led a couple of walk audits in the 4th and 5th Street corridor last month. Those were co-sponsored by HCOG and HTA and Tri-County Independent Living. And we then put out a little report of kind of the findings and observations from those walk audits, and would encourage you to check it out. It's on our website, transportationpriorities.org, or I can send it to you if you're interested. And I know that's a Caltrans corridor, and you're going to hear from Caltrans in a minute, I think, but a lot of work in the corridor typically requires the city's involvement as well. So just wanted to make sure you all are aware of that, and hopefully we'll make some progress towards having that a safer and more comfortable corridor for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else here in person for general public comments? Okay. Let's see anybody. Do we have anyone on Zoom? Okay, cool. Welcome, Mark. Okay, well then we will close public comment and move on. Having no old business or no new business, we'll move on to a report from Caltrans on the HM4 safety enhancements on 4th, 5th, and R Streets.
I'm going to recuse myself.
Welcome. Oh, how's that height?
It's good. Can you hear me okay?
No. Can you?
Yes? Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. Thanks for inviting me to come talk to you today. My name is Andreas Kraus. I'm with Caltrans, and I'm here to talk today about the HM4 Safety Enhancements project slated for 4th and 5th Street. So the plans are draft and subject to change, just to get that note out there. All right, so let's get started.
You're a little quiet. If you could
Okay,
get the mic
I'll try
closer.
to talk louder. Whoa, it's moving on its own. I'm not touching anything. Okay, I'll put my hands behind my back. All right, so the quick agenda. We'll take a safety moment, and then I'll talk about the HM4 Safety Enhancement Program. I'll talk about existing conditions on 4th and 5th, and then some of the planned safety enhancements and the schedule. So, safety moment is on seatbelt use. So, starting in the top right, basically 92% of the people in the United States who drive in vehicles wear their seatbelts. And 50% of all fatalities of vehicle occupants killed in 2022 were unrestrained. So that means that the 8% of people who do not wear seatbelts represent 50% of all the fatalities of vehicle occupants, which is pretty significant. Risk reductions from wearing your seatbelts are quite large. So for passenger cars, they range from 45 to 50% for fatal or injury collisions, and for passenger vehicle or for For pickup trucks, it's even larger, 60 to 65% reductions. So things to know, buckling up is the single most effective thing you can do to protect yourself. And that airbags are designed to work in concert with seatbelts. They do not replace seatbelts. So, and proper fit is important, and there's a lot more information at that website, including for women, pregnant women, and children. Okay. So the HM4 safety program is essentially the Caltrans version of a quick build program. And it has 6 focal areas: wrong way driver prevention, horizontal curve warning signs, crossover collision prevention, runoff road prevention, and bicycle and pedestrian safety enhancements. And so those are what I'm going to be talking about today, the pedestrian bicycle safety enhancements, as well as some other things. So the HM4 safety program, because it's a quick build program, it has a very short lead time. So from concept to construction is 2 years, which is lightning fast for Caltrans. This is a new program. It's about 2 years old. A typical Caltrans project takes 10 years. So to be able to squeeze it down into a 2-year time frame, some limitations apply. So we can't do anything that requires right-of-way or environmental permitting or utility relocation. And hardscaping is difficult, if not impossible. So things with concrete, say. So what does that leave us? That leaves us with signs, striping, pavement marking, and channelizers, which are those flexible plastic posts that we stick along the roadways. And that might not sound like much, but you can do quite a bit. It's quite powerful. So here's a picture of 4th and 5th existing conditions. And this was taken before the 5th Street job that was recently completed. But what you'll notice here is there's no consistency in how crosswalks are marked. Some are marked, some are not marked. Some use different markings. Some have the, what we call them the shark's teeth, the little diamonds in advance for the pedestrian yield warnings in front of the cross sections, or in front of the crosswalks. So that's what we're working with today. And so we have several planned safety enhancements. We are doing high visibility crosswalk enhancements. We're adding some rectangular rapid flashing beacons. We're enhancing the no parking areas. And we're going to put some pavement markings in front of the bus stops. So we'll start with the crosswalks. There's different styles of crosswalks, and we're going to, on 4th and 5th corridor, we're going to be consistent and use the ladder style at the bottom. You will have seen this on the 4th and 5th Street already, that all the crosswalks on, all the currently marked crosswalks on 5th Street are the ladder style. For this project, we will be marking all 4 legs with the ladder style crosswalks, including the downstream legs, which are often unmarked currently. And if the advanced yield markings are missing, then we will be adding those as well. And then for the minor legs, the stop pavement markings will be refreshed as needed. We'll be adding several rapid flashing beacons throughout the 4th and 5th corridor, including also on our street and 3rd. So this is the list of the planned rapid flashing beacon locations. The one update is the 4th Street and B rapid flashing beacon has to be dropped due to potential hazardous waste concerns, so that one will no longer be in the project. All right, so there's the new California daylighting law that talks about needing 20 feet in front of any marked or unmarked crosswalk for visibility, and that begins January 1st. So all of the red curb, no parking zones on 4th and 5th are already set and established. We will not be changing those at all. But what we are planning on doing is enhancing them by putting some white cross-hatching in front of them. So you'll see that here shown on one of the plan sets in front of the crosswalk. There's some cross-hatching there. The limits of that cross-hatching correspond to the existing red curb limits, And to the right there is an example from the city of Arcata of what that might look like. And that's just to reinforce the don't park here. All right, and then lastly, we have several bus stops on 4th and 5th. And so they have a little sign and red curbing. And all we're proposing to do is put a pavement marking, just white text on the ground that says bus only, just to reinforce that that is a bus stop. And we've circulated the draft plans to the city and HTA, and those draft comments on those draft plans are due today. We want to finalize the bid package this December, so next month, coming up very soon, and then the construction is planned for next summer or fall timeframe. And that is all I have.
About the hazardous waste.
Yeah, so 2 questions. One is, can you say more about how a sign could lead to hazardous waste? And my other question is about, this flashing is like the one in front of the movie theater now?
No.
Okay.
The one in front of the movie theater is called a pedestrian hybrid beacon, and it uses red flashing lights that are a regulatory stop. So a rapid flashing beacon does not force anybody to stop. It's just your crosswalk sign, your pedestrian sign there, and then see that yellow, there's two lights below it. One is flashing here, and it goes back and forth, left and right, left and right.
Is that like the one
flashing
on Harris?
with a push button. So
I know Harris isn't your jurisdiction, right? But Harris has that push button.
Yeah, it would be like the one by Ramones or the one by Winco.
Yeah.
Okay, so my question was, my sense is if it just was always flashing.
No, it's only when the pedestrian pushes the
Okay,
button.
good.
Yes.
Thank you. And then the hazardous waste question.
So to put in a sign, you need to dig a post hole to sink the sign into the ground. And so excavating the post hole, you're getting into the existing dirt. And so there is it's not confirmed, it's potential, but there were old gas stations and dry cleaning stations along 4th and 5th. And they're considered potential hazardous waste areas. So we can't dig in those areas without doing the surveys to confirm if there's hazardous waste or not. But doing those surveys is beyond the scope of this type of a project. So we just have to say we can't go there.
Could we go back to the slide that shows the overhead view of 4th and 5th Street between N and O?
Sure.
So I'm very, very glad that you chose this as your example, because for a couple of years, the 5th and O Street bus stop was my bus stop to get to work. And trying to cross the street, 4th and 5th Street at O in the mornings to get to work is why I had a purse made out of high-vis striping. It's why I started carrying a light-up traffic wand. And when that wasn't enough, it's why I started carrying an air horn, because people do not stop. I actually one day even called in a Caltrans vehicle that did not stop when I was trying to step off the curb. I would have to give credit to the log truck drivers. They always stop. They're extremely courteous. And after the big earthquake, we had a bunch of Canadian lineman crews who were angels. I emailed their company because they were so great about stopping and letting me cross. So I don't believe that a RRFB is sufficient at that intersection, because when I'm crossing the street and I have this high-vis purse and waving a flashing traffic wand and blowing an air horn, and people still will not stop, they see me, they hear me. I do not believe that a non-regulatory signal is going to be sufficient. I have coworkers who alter their routes to work or alter their means of traveling to and from work because they do not feel safe crossing 4th and 5th. I have a coworker who normally bikes to work, but if she has a day where she doesn't feel like biking, she's not feeling well, she takes a taxi specifically because she does not feel safe crossing 4th and 5th from the bus stop. So I know, I Googled it to make sure, there are solar-powered hawk signals available. Why is that not on the table?
A hawk or a pedestrian hybrid beacon, we likely wouldn't do it solar powered, but even if it were, it requires much more infrastructure. It requires much bigger digging of holes, and so right now a pedestrian hybrid beacon is out of the scope of this particular type of funding, project funding. So what this project funding is for is basically quick build stuff that can get you a long way, but maybe doesn't get you all the way. And O Street in particular is one that's really stood out, especially from the street story reports and other things. So we wanted to be sure to put them at O Street. For 4th and O, because there's a curve right in front of O Street, we're also planning on putting an advanced flasher so that there's some warning for this motorist as they're coming around the curve. So I would see this as the first step in a longer term solution. And we do have the next major capital program that's going to come through Eureka is about 10 years out or so. And the issue of improved crossings on 4th and 5th is a major issue, and we've just started the conversation with the city on how we might consider improving those crossings to improve comfort and safety. And a lot of ideas are being discussed, but it'll take us a while to sort through that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I do want to add, because I don't know if you guys are aware, but just off screen, above there is the Humboldt County Library, which, is utilized by a lot of families, about a lot of seniors, a lot of people with disabilities. Across the street from the Humboldt County Library, North Coast Children's Services is building a preschool. So there is going to be a lot of increased vehicle traffic. There's going to be a lot of increased pedestrian traffic, lots of that involving small children, preschoolers. So I really think we need to up our game on this particular area, because it's already a very high risk intersection, and it is, it is going to have more and more vulnerable users in the very short term. So thank you.
Some of these guys have been on the commission longer than me, so they may already know the answer to this question. But if I'm recalling correctly, there is not a stoplight between, is it V or X, where the Shell station is, until you get to H or I. Is that correct? That's a long stretch, and I just wonder, what are the rules about actually installing additional stoplights?
There's a lot of considerations that go into determining if stoplights are warranted or needed, and they're quite expensive to build. So they're definitely out of the scope of this particular project. But again, I would say with the major capital project that's going to come through in about 10 years, we are looking at, we potentially have the ability to do some more expensive treatments like a signal or a hawk or other things. But those require a lot of discussion with the city, public engagement, other things. So that's going to be a long-term process to figure out what we might do. But I can say that the city and Caltrans is specifically looking at improved safety at all of the crossings along the 4th and 5th Street corridor, both now with this HM4 project, which is what we can do quickly, and with the upcoming capital project.
Okay, but there's nothing prescribing, just because it's a freeway, technically, right? It's a highway, that there's no reason there couldn't be additional stoplights.
Well, there are technically rules and regulations on where you can put stoplights and not. versus say a stop sign or other things. And so we would need to take a look at those, and they're called signal warrants. So we would need to take a look at those. But I agree, there are some long stretches, both on the north side and on the south side, where there are no signals. And we definitely see those areas people tend to try to speed up. So we're aware of the issue, and we're trying to figure out some better enhancements.
And I think there's recently, I don't know if you're aware, but I think the signalized intersection at 4th and L went in, is it in the last 4 years, 3 years? Very, very recently. So there has been a recent addition of a traffic signal there at 4th and L. That's before you get to H&I. So there definitely have been that one added, and it's before that on 5th Street, the one at 5th and L was there previously. So there has been some progress on those being installed in the corridor.
I think it's R to L, doesn't have any signals, I think. Althea, you had another question?
Yeah, so I mean, I know a little of signal warrants and the MUTSID and all that stuff. What is the worst thing that can happen if, according to those regulations, a traffic signal is installed that isn't warranted?
It's really just a matter of how it gets paid for.
And I wonder, and maybe Jesse, you know this off the top of your head, perhaps you do as well, because we did recently, like L Street just went in, and then there was the one at Vigo Street that went in. Do you recall how much it cost to do that? I remember it being a very lengthy process because there was some that, and I don't think that the business paid for that one at Vigo, did they? That was city money?
Yeah, that one. So the two different scenarios when a local agency like the City of Eureka installs something versus when Caltrans does. We both have our own separate processes that we have to go through when it comes to planning, design, and implementation. So the one at Vigo was significantly less costly than the one. I don't know the cost of one at L, but I just generally we tend to be able to do things because we have less process for more reasonable price. But
But that's kind of, it has to be warranted in order to get certain funding sources to pay for it. Is that kind of what the thing is? Because I guess what I'm reading and what you're saying is like, would we get in trouble if we put in a stop sign here and it didn't check all the boxes? Or signal?
Well, I can't do it under this current program. So anything that we're talking about is really in the realm of this potential future capital project, which has the support dollars and the time frame and the planning processes in place to be considering these bigger type solutions. And it has, the public engagement and all that built in. So that's why those projects takes 10 years and it's just getting started.
Cool. Allison, I see your hand up, and then I'll get you, Robert.
Yeah, so a couple things. Just wanted to say, glad to see the crosswalks be made consistent and more clear, and also that the no parking around crosswalks will be made clear. I think that'll really help traffic because sometimes when I'm driving down, it's hard to tell where you can't park when you're driving down that fast. Anyway, I do also think that this will potentially help us build data on O Street. Since this stop sign or stop signal is really in the scope of this project, I think it will help us build data on getting that funding in the future. That's what I got.
Yeah, Robert.
Yeah, I was just curious if this is part of like a larger strategy to kind of spread this out across the city, or if this is just like spot, places you've seen that are hot spots that need to be addressed. Is there more kind of changes like this that we can expect to see in the next, couple months, years, or is this kind of like you're hitting it as you find it?
Well, we the 5th Street job that just finished up, we made some last minute changes to that to basically try to get many of these crosswalk upgrades so that there's consistency in the crosswalks. So that was our first stab because that project was in progress. And then this is a follow-up to that. This uses a different funding source, obviously. And then in terms of, it comes down to how do you fund it and how do you program it to get designed and built. And so beyond this project, then the next one is going to be that capital project.
Okay.
in
So
terms
you
of
don't
planning.
have, as far as like a roadmap goes, there's no future like intersections or areas that you have similar like quick build kind of plans for at this time.
Not in the city of Eureka.
Okay.
We are doing some of these quick build projects across the district. So we've got another one in Eureka that's going this summer and another one on Lake 20. We'll keep looking for additional ones.
And I think part of the story there, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is I don't know if you were here, Robert, when the project manager Jeff Pimentel from Caltrans came in and kind of give an overview of the projects throughout the city of Eureka. And so they have a number of projects that are already planned on Broadway when it comes to capital projects along there that those projects are in one way, shape, or form in some phase of project. I'll let Jeff speak to those, but so those are kind of already planned on the horizon. So those are like things that are coming, whether it's like the South Broadway Complete Streets, which is much closer to being something that would hit the ground versus something like the Coster Couplet, which is further out in that spectrum. So there is things planned throughout the city from Caltrans from that standpoint. It's just they're in a different program and in different phases of funding versus like the quick build program.
Right, and I wasn't talking about Broadway. So there are other projects planned for Broadway, either planned and funded or we're looking for funding.
Yeah. I mean, I was just asking about this. I mean, these seem like pretty quick changes that have, decent improvements.
Yeah.
So if there were other places and other plans, I was just curious if they were there because it seems pretty neatly packaged to kind of lift up what's missing in this area. And I don't know if there are other areas like this around Eureka. So yeah, I was just curious if there were any on your roadmap. So it doesn't sound like it, which is
Not
fine.
for this quick build project, because Broadway is being covered by these other projects, and it would. Yeah, Broadway is a different situation. So we were focusing on 4th and 5th, largely because there aren't a lot of other projects planned there yet.
That makes sense. Yeah. Thank you.
I did want to just follow up on Colin's comments about the walkability audit. They identified several proposed enhancements in the 4th and 5th corridor, and this project takes a good stab at addressing several of those comments already, in particular the downstream crosswalks, and I think the RRFBs. It doesn't address everything, but it is making progress towards those recommendations that just came out a month or two ago.
Wow, I'm impressed. A responsive and forthright and forward-thinking agency, and I appreciate Caltrans's effort and the state's efforts to make our city highways a bit safer to traverse. It's really nice to see. A few questions.
Yeah.
The flex posts you mentioned being installed, are those like the flexible Hot Wheel tracks or something that looks more like a flexible bollard?
So those are not proposed for this particular project,
Oh,
but they would, the channelizers are plastic flexible posts that if you hit them, they'll bend over and then flop back up.
okay.
And I know that they are being proposed as part of the Complete Streets project on Broadway to help separate the bike lane from the traffic.
Okay. And these are like flaps?
Well, it's a round plastic post that's
Yeah,
3
okay.
feet tall.
Perfect. Thank you.
But the bottom of it lets it bend over if
Yeah.
it gets hit by a car.
I had a toy like that as a kid.
Yeah.
Next is you were speaking about future improvements 10 years down the road, and
Yes.
I was curious as to what kind of community engagement you anticipate having in the next, say, 5 years.
So I'm not the expert on the community engagement
That's all right.
process, but it is a larger capital project, so there is a formal community engagement part of that project.
Mhm.
But I can't speak to the details of how
Right.
that's done.
Well, very exciting work. Thanks for sharing with us.
Okay.
And I just was curious, can you show us the list of the intersections again, just so I can
So,
accurately tell people what's up?
so we're doing, in terms of the
Thank you, Philip.
in terms of the crosswalks, we are doing all intersections.
Right.
Okay.
I'm looking for the beacons.
But the beacons
Yeah.
are those.
RCO and commercial. Okay. And will they have, is it just the post with the flashers on it? Or will there actually be the lights embedded in the crosswalk like we have in some here in Eureka?
It will just be the posts with the signs and the flashing beacon on the sign. We will not be putting the in-pavement flashing lights.
Okay. Cool. It's a bummer. I really appreciate that work is being done in this area. I walk down here as well and bike a lot. And I also, walk in other areas of the city where we do have those flashing beacons, and I totally have the same experiences that you have had, where I push the button and then I just sit there and wait, and still nobody really stops, and I still have to wait till that moment where I can dart through like Frogger style. And I think that they are better than nothing, but there definitely needs to be some more done to shift, whether it's driver culture there or what have you, because that is an area where a lot of people cross because they have no other option. So it's not like they could get to where they're going in some other way. But I do really appreciate this. This is lightning fast in terms of what Caltrans usually does. So
This is what we can do
positive.
now, and it's
Yeah.
improvement over what's there. And
Yeah.
and discussions have started on longer term solutions.
cool. And you did say that the deadline for comments was today, and the city put together comments. Is there anything that you'd like to share with us?
We didn't have a lot of comments. I should just make sure Jay didn't have anything last minute comment wise. Yeah, we did not have a lot of comments on this plan. Pretty straightforward. And we've been talking along the way throughout the process when they were developing the plans, especially with trying to finalize out the work they were doing on 5th Street, to incorporate some of these things ahead of this project coming along and, jumping over and trying to pick up some of the things that got missed there. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
And my last question is on the agenda item. It says R Street also. Is that additional things that are happening, or is that wrapped into this as this is the end point of this?
Well, the focus is 4th and 5th, but we also are putting the rapid flashing beacons on our street.
At where
At
there's the
There's an
cutout.
existing crosswalk
Okay.
at the cutout. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
So there'll be a rapid flashing beacon there, and I think we're doing a small striping enhancement as well, where there's the northbound lane is a forced right onto 3rd, and right now the guide stripe for that turn is a dashed line, which is incorrect because it's a mandatory turn. So we're going to make that a solid line, just to try to reinforce that turn is needed.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, and that
Thanks.
that R and thirds. I mean, that location was identified in the bike plan as a location for a potential bike boulevard through there, and I think that was one of the things that came out of the bike. I think it was probably being thought on both sides, but through that process, I think it got added in this project, or maybe not.
We just know that it's an issue, and especially with traffic coming off the bridges, they're typically faster than they're typically coming off the bridges pretty fast. So hopefully this will improve visibility and driver yielding.
Cool. Thanks. Now, Thea, you had the last question.
I just wanted to know with the intersection of 4th and R, if you guys were going to be looking at the signal timing there at all.
Not as part of this project, but can you tell me what you're thinking?
Well, I've noticed when I'm walking home at night, if I'm crossing at the downstream side of, 4th and R, the way the signal timing works is that the northbound traffic on R anybody who's making a left turn there gets a turn signal first, and then there's kind of a gap, and then the pedestrian signal goes, and then there's the right turn for people coming off the bridge. And what I've noticed is that people get kind of confused, and they see, okay, well, the other side made their turn, and the pedestrian signal hasn't started, so it must be okay for me to make my turn. So they start to turn just as the pedestrian signal, comes up for me. So I have quite a few interactions where I'm like, no, you need to stop because it is my turn to cross the street. You don't have the turn light. So that's just something I've noticed there that I think is problematic, is people don't realize that the turn light for the other side is separated from their turn light by a pedestrian interval.
Okay. I can definitely pass that along to our signal operations folks. And also, are you folks aware of the customer service report website for Caltrans?
Do tell.
It's a portal that Caltrans has, and it's for the public to submit any and all comments, litter on the road, graffiti, signal timing issues, whatever. And once it's submitted, they'll figure out the right people in Caltrans to send it to and to try to get addressed. So I don't have the web address memorized, but if you look for Caltrans customer service,
csr.dot.ca.gov.
there you go.
There you go. CSR. Okay.
So that would also be a good place to submit your concern about the signal timing. But I'll for sure at least verbally tell our signal folks.
Cool.
I also wanted to appreciate leveraging Street Story to figure out where to focus your efforts. It's just people are investing in it, and it's nice to see that it's being leveraged.
Thank you.
All right. Well, unless we have any other questions for Andres, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
Thank you.
appreciate it. All right. And the next report we have is from staff about the C Street Bike Boulevard. Oh.
All right. Well, we are bringing the C Street Bike Boulevard to you guys, present the project to you. We've talked about it, I think, in this venue a couple times through the bike plan. It was, we've alluded to this project, as a funded project that's coming. So we wanted to give you kind of an overview of some of the high points of what this project is. Currently, we are, again, like I mentioned, slow down a little bit here, as the project is funded by the Active Transportation Program. The city went after and was successful in applying for and receiving funding for this project for construction. We intend to do the design and all the other components of the project in-house. So we were able to successfully get construction funds for the project. The intent of the project was to establish a north-south, kind of more of a community level, lower level traffic stress corridor from the Old Town area down to, near Henderson Center to the south. And when we talk about a low level of traffic stress, we're talking about trying to, in this case, limit in certain sections or reduce the traffic volumes on those sections to allow for, a lower level of perceived traffic stress. So when somebody's on the roadway, there's less vehicles zooming around or moving quickly through there, kind of trying to get at local traffic only through a majority section, let's say from like 7th Street to the south. Because if you go from 7th Street to the north, you get into more of the Old Town area where it's a little bit more difficult to constrain vehicle movements. So today we wanted to kind of present like the high level look at what the intersection, some of those improvements would look like that would kind of change the volume of traffic in the corridor. So I'll start by kind of describing what's on the screen in front of you now. On the left-hand side, that would be north up. The project starts at 1st and C Street, so that'd be the Mattakit Plaza down there, where the waterfront trail, kind of the segment that runs to the west terminates there at the plaza, and the boardwalk continues on out along the waterfront. There'd be improvements from the section from 1st over to 7th Street, where that area would continue to be two-way traffic as it is now, but there'd be improvements as far as reducing crossing distances, putting in bulb outs, that sort of improvement through that section. So not a lot of traffic flow changes as far as that goes, but more bulb outs and pedestrian-related amenities, and of course some on-street bike lane markings for a bicycle boulevard and bicycle boulevard signage. Our funding, we kind of had a cutout for improvements on 4th and 5th Street. So those are anticipated to be picked up with, some of those improvements have already been picked up by current Caltrans projects that have been completed recently, with bulb outs that have been installed on both 4th and 5th that are not necessarily exactly the same as what we're proposing in Old Town, where we're talking about doing some sort of stamped concrete where it'd look more decorative and more like an Old Town theme as far as the printing on the concrete. And then as we transition along the corridor, we'll probably, well, the slides you'll see here will kind of still look like a stamped concrete. They'll probably like fit in more with what the existing kind of nature of the street section is going to the south. Our first major change in traffic flow is going to happen at 7th Street. So at 7th Street, here you'll see C Street crossing left to right. The existing condition on C Street is 7th Street is a 2-lane, one-way street heading to the top of your page there. And then C Street intersects with it, two-way traffic on both legs. In this case, we'll be changing the traffic flow on the south leg, where 7th Street traffic will no longer be able to make a right-hand turn onto C Street, and then through traffic on C Street will no longer be able to make that through movement at this location. So this was, again, to try to get at trying to reduce the number of folks who would be using C Street as a thoroughfare to make it through, where, so to reduce volume and reduce speeds through there. It doesn't mean that somebody couldn't either get off a block earlier or go a block past and still be able to make their route into the neighborhood and get to their house or to their friend's house or whatever that might be, their destination. It just means it would kind of slow down a direct route through. And you'll see that as a theme throughout. And I only have 5 slides here, so I'll probably run through them, and then we can go back and go ask questions and have anything you guys kind of want to run through at that point. I have an animation here that may or may not work, so let's make a run at this here and see. And this kind of shows you see some bicycle traffic coming up here and entering bike boxes, and rapid flashing beacons going off there, cars pulling through. So the beacons here would be cyclist activated, where they could wheel up and push the button and be able to activate that beacon, stopping or at least alerting traffic to their presence as they're making their cross there. So it's not a full red stop as we kind of talked about in the previous, but it alerts much more than is currently there that, hey, somebody's crossing here, and really tries to grab traffic's attention there. Our next treatment, and there's a couple of these locations, is at Simpson and Hillside intersect with C Street. in its current configuration, right now you're seeing these raised median islands in the middle of the intersection. These don't exist in current configuration. It's just a regular street going through there. So what this configuration helps us avoid is whether it's somebody on Simpson Street trying to head to the east onto Hillsdale and cutting through, and potentially what we've seen is, just quick hitter switches through these areas, and people, again, trying to use this as cut throughs or that sort of thing. So this would try to eliminate really kind of diagonal movements across the traffic lanes and keep it more in line, where if somebody coming west on Hillsdale, they could still take a right onto C Street and then take a left onto Simpson. They just wouldn't be able to cut the corner, so to speak, through there. So it tries to get everybody in line and in their lanes to alert both the car and driver and the cyclist or pedestrian as to where people are at and where they're going. One of the impacts of this particular alignment is that there are a few areas where parking will have to be eliminated. You can see some cross-hatching here. You're trying to channelize some of these to slow traffic down. That's another way that these work, is not only to eliminate the kind of diagonal cut-through movements, but it also it really restricts the physical feel of the roadway. So that is intended to slow vehicular traffic down. Try to create a more slower pace throughout the entire corridor. Let's see if we have a preview here. Yeah, see, they're not all going to work. All right, well, we'll keep moving on. These animations were put together by somebody previously on our team who's no longer with us, and we were having struggles to get them to run correctly, so we'll keep on trying. All right, so 14th and C is the next intersection, and this is another type of tool that we're using here, where rather than like at 7th and C, where there was a one-way on one leg, in this case, it's one way on two legs. So if you're traveling on 14th Street and you want to get to C Street, you're not going to be able to pull in either direction here. So again, if somebody wants to, if they live in the neighborhood or they're visiting somebody in the neighborhood or they have a destination that's local in the neighborhood, they can still go a block up or a block before and be able to come in to that location. They just won't be able to directly run through there. Let's see if we can get this one to work. Here we go. So we got cyclists entering from north and south, stopping, activating, beacons. Continuing through, they have to make a crossing movement in order to get lined up with the direction they're going. The cyclists do. Vehicles still come out and make turning movements, but they are all queued up differently. They have to stop behind the bike box. The cyclists are able to move through first and be out visible in front and really try to make them as visible and as prominent as possible, while also reducing the amount of traffic flow in and out of C Street. And finally, this is another one of the one ways at Harris Street. We have a number of these other the different configurations that I just mentioned. There's a few other places throughout, and we can go back to the original slide and kind of look at those once we're done here. But this one here, again, just trying to limit the inbound traffic coming off of Harris onto C Street here, just to reduce traffic volumes, and then also identify, a lot more signage and striping, pavement markings on the ground to really delineate where cyclists are, make them visible. Really make it both apparent to cyclists and vehicles as to where people are in relation to the roadway when making turning movements, just to make it as clear as possible. So to go back up and look at the overview, again, 7th Street, we have the limit of one-way traffic at 7th and C. We have the two traffic calming island elements. That's where we have two offset intersections on this section of C Street. One is at Hillsdale, like that's the one we looked at. There's another one at Humboldt. So those installations are very similar. Then at 14th Street, we saw that where we limit the traffic coming off 4th Street from entering into C Street. And then again at Boone, it's a similar configuration to 14th Street, where it's again limiting traffic coming off of Boone onto C Street. And I think that is about it. Again, this project, we're in design right now. Our design plans aren't very fun to look at, and they're not far enough along where these are kind of basic, but again, hopefully give you a better idea of kind of what some of those improvements are. I didn't check this one to see if we had a preview, but we can give that a run here. Oh, look at this. We can make it happen. Sorry to jump around. So with that, I'll bring it back to the overview and see if you guys had any questions.
Questions, anybody? Allison, yeah?
Yeah, I was curious if there would be like the calming element median islands. Is that going to just be like pavement, or is it? I know it's sort of draft level, but is there going to be plants, or is there something so it's not easy to just skip over?
Yeah, so this project, again, we went after active transportation program funding, and we're able to have funding for raised curb islands. So these will be hard raised curb islands. So they'll be prominent, they'll stick out, not like just a painted or symbolized or delineators on the ground. That'll be hard surface.
Yeah.
Thank you for the report. On the median islands, they're kind of like not that attractive. And I noticed Eureka doesn't really have any. I just came back from Mexico where there's like roundabouts everywhere. But that's a little bit more attractive. And I just wonder, has that ever been looked at? Because that could also solve this issue of like trying to calm traffic and distribute drivers better, right, in those kind of intersections where we're trying to prevent them from doing crazy stuff. So has that ever been considered in Eureka?
So is that rather than just having the concrete filled median, to actually have plantings and that sort of thing in there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's...
Or even fountains.
Fancy.
I can't think of a fountain that's been considered in these situations like this just since I've been here. But yeah, median island planting, oftentimes we'll try to incorporate plantings if we have like an LID feature or something on the edge where there's a curb line we're trying to pick up and treat storm drain runoff. In the medians, it's certainly something I think has come up, the question, it's the question about like beautification versus maintenance and how those dollars are there to maintain those. So yeah, I think that conversation has come up before, certainly. And, while we have funding for doing, concrete and that sort of thing, we don't always get projects don't necessarily get funding through the active transportation program for funding of vegetation or landscaping like this.
I would add to that, we have a lot of sculptors, and some public art might be a lower maintenance beautification method. And then moving on, the bicyclist activated signals, do those require the bicyclist to dismount in order to reach them?
I'm going to turn this one over to Jay. He's been studying up on this. So Jay, are we going to be able to have the cyclist stay on bike to be able to activate?
The cyclists don't have to dismount. You can pull right up and access. It's at 42 inches, which is about 3.5 feet. So you shouldn't dismount.
I think you might be able to activate. And then if you're in a bike, like if you're pulling out into a bike box, you'd have to activate and then move up and over when it comes to being able to for example, here you might have an activation button on the curb line that you could activate before you pull out to get in the zone that you need to be and able to make your movement at the intersection.
Okay. I guess we'll see how that goes. And then what public education do we have planned for these changes? Because I know people have been very confused by like the H&I Street stuff. And I mean, the Harris and I intersection where it goes from, one way to two way, people have problems with that. And it's been that way as long as I can remember. So what are we going to do to get drivers aware that these changes are coming and how they are going to cope with them and what they're supposed to do?
Yeah, I think we definitely are going to put out, it's kind of two fronts there. One is the education component that you mentioned, and I think we need to have kind of some of those, we were a little slow to the trigger on getting some of those out on H&I, so we can be better about that, and we will, and able to get out, some information on the website that you can go point people to that shows them how to navigate this, whether you're in a vehicle or if you're a cyclist who's navigating some of these kind of, things that are new for the city of Eureka, right? Like maybe people haven't, if we don't have it here in the city, maybe they haven't been somewhere else to ride on it. So we definitely want to make that stuff available for them on our website. And then I think there's also another component that we'll be adding into our bid process is early notification and notification of when things are coming, as far as trying to get out at the very least a month ahead with our intent right now is like with a portable changeable message sign board to alert people of changes to the roadway configuration, and try to get them pointed in the right direction to get information, back to that educational information. So in the area, really trying to make it apparent that it's coming and where to go get information.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the animations and I'm like, oh, that's great. The cyclists on this one are a little small, but I think, having that be on the news or having a couple of PSA TV commercials could be a really big help, especially to people who aren't, really handy with the internet. So, yeah.
Anybody else over here have any questions, Allison?
Yeah, I keep my mind keeps going back to the median islands, but also just generally we're calling it a bike boulevard. I think boulevard sort of implies an amount of like beauty, right? And yeah, I'm serious, right? Like we're calling it the bike boulevard. It's something we're going to be proud of. I just think just considering those little touches, like putting, whether it's low maintenance art or something like that, I think really make it what it is, which is a bike boulevard that people are going to enjoy. I'm excited for it, but just I think beauty is part of it, and that's my final comment on that.
Here. My main question about this as I was biking down C Street into Old Town today was how are we going to cross 4th and 5th Street? So it was very nice to hear that there is in fact a plan for that, to have the beacon there. And forgive me if you've already said this, what is the timeline?
Yeah, so we're in design right now. We intend to bid the project this kind of early midwinter and be in construction this summer. Yeah, we are up on a deadline with our funds to get them spent, so we will be installing these improvements this summer.
Cool. All right, any other, Shanti?
The selection of C Street, I'm just curious, is that just because of traffic counts and various incidents that have happened? So I just know there's other streets like F that people also use to sort of traverse the city. So is this just based on incidents, the counts of problems that have occurred?
Excuse me. No, I think there were a number of things. So the idea of this project has probably been been thought about for a number of years. We applied for the ATP funding back in 2022. And I think the connectivity that this project provides with being connected to the waterfront trail at C Street and being at the C Street Plaza, kind of, that the waterfront core and how the general use of the existing street, not having a lot of other, I think a lot of through traffic already on it and the opportunities to make some improvements. There's a number, I guess, short answer is there's a number of things that went into it. And I think, but it doesn't mean that we're not looking at other corridors as well. Like you mentioned F Street, and that's definitely one that we already have funding for some similar improvements. G Street. So other streets nonetheless, where we have some additional funding for a project on G Street that would be very similar to this, and we're going to be monitoring how this project unfolds in order to influence that one. But I think we're looking at other opportunities for more substantial builds like this. Like I said, right now we have funding for this one, and then the one on G Street, and we'll continue to look for opportunities for funding to kind of make some more robust lower level traffic stress opportunities to get north-south, and then also east-west, right? That's kind of the next frontier, and that's what the bike plan tried to look at, is like, where can we find these opportunities where we can have these type of facilities installed. So 8th Street's one of those. It was pretty high priority in the bike plan, where you could see some of these type of elements installed there.
One other question, in terms of beautification for vegetation specifically, have you guys ever worked with organizations like the Trust for Public Land? When I was in Oakland, we got a lot of grant funding. I was on the school board for beautification, specifically vegetation, of our school campuses. And I just wonder if that's something, or similar organizations that might be interested in helping us take some of our public land and make it a little bit more attractive.
So I think in engineering, transportation, we don't have a lot of crossover that. We definitely work with Keep Eureka Beautiful when it comes to the street tree program. And so you'll see street trees planted along the edges of the roadways. And we work with them to get those street trees installed. And those are usually private street trees that get installed. I think some of the challenges with upkeeping maintenance is it gets outside of the purview of engineering, transportation, public works, when you start long-term maintenance of that vegetation. So it's just a little bit more complex when it comes to the city and how those things get squared away.
All right. Any other C Street Bike Boulevard questions, comments?
Thank you for the report and the
Thank you.
clear amount of consideration and this planning you've done on this. It's exciting to see some mock-ups of physical barriers in the street to help calm traffic, and very confident in that. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, and next we've got introduction to quick build projects.
So I'll give a brief introduction. Jay Littlemore is going to give a presentation here on quick build. Turn my mic back on quick build projects. These aren't currently, we don't have identified projects. Some of the work that we're talking about with C Street, we're considering maybe getting out there and doing some level of quick build ahead of the hard build there with this one coming up. We're still trying to gear up as to where, what this, how do we take these projects on, where are we putting them, and what do they look like? But we wanted to walk through with you some of the ideas that are out there and what quick build could look like and get some input from you. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jay, who's done the research on this topic, and let him introduce some of these options.
Good afternoon. You can see this is an introduction to quick build projects. On the first slide, you can see multiple different applications being done by municipalities throughout California. On our next slide, we just have a definition of quick build projects, which we've been discussing here with Caltrans just recently with the C Street project. But by rethinking streets, city staff can deliver better economic performances and new transportation choices and have a higher quality of life when implemented correctly. Quick builds can also be quick, flexible, and constructed by city staff at minimal cost. So very beneficial to keep it in-house in the engineering and public works department, be able to come up with concepts, locations, and implement. Next slide. And the processes, as you can see, is the demonstration process. We have the pilot project, but we start with planning the project, what type of quick build application we'd like to implement, choose the right location, go out and perform the work, implement the project, take the time and evaluate the outcomes, and then determine if we'd like to proceed with permanent installation of the application. Next slide. This is a great example, as discussed earlier, of a traffic circle or a roundabout using parking stops and paint and cones in Denver. A great location, and these are popular quick build ideas that are being implemented. Next slide. Right here is a quick build for meeting islands where you can do safety enhancement crosswalks, flex posts or delineators. On the illustration to the left, there's concrete barriers, multiple different ways to extend the safety of the pedestrian on longer lengths of crosswalk. Next slide.
I do notice some flowers there in those.
Yes, very decorative. This follows with the Vision Zero program, a Safe Streets to School quick build, where it's paint illustrating the curb extension, delineators, and really reducing the length of crossing. So it extends the safety for the individual trying to cross the school. The next slide. And these are traffic chicanes and traffic calming elements. You can actually see some of these practices on 2nd Street from L to M right in front of Carson Mansion. These are very popular applications as well that are very inexpensive to implement. It's just about finding the location and implement. And then the next slide. And then just the conclusions and benefits of the quick build. It prioritizes affordable, rapid, and temporary solutions to inaccessible areas and unsafe street-safe conditions. And as discussed throughout what we're using with Caltrans, the multiple benefits that can be done, mainly speed. Our projects take multiple years. Quick builds can be anywhere between 18 to 24 months. Okay. And with that, it was a pretty simple process when it comes to quick builds. If you have any questions, we can answer them now.
Thank you. If these are existing infrastructure, right, like you guys presumably have a lot of these concrete blocks around and cones and paint and things like that, why does it still take 18 to 24 months to implement?
There are processes that we need to take. You need to go and develop a traffic control plan. It needs to be put through design. It needs to be stamped. It needs to be approved. I mean, hardscape or large projects like the Caltrans project typically could take 24 months. I think if we found, or I know if we found a location here in the city, it shouldn't take a full 24 months. It might be between 12 and 18 months, but there are just still steps that we have to take to make sure that the city is not held liable for any construction that has been implemented in our network.
So we could definitely, I mean, we would likely be able to beat those type of timeframes like Jay was mentioning here. We do have, and we are working, I mean, we have our subcommittee here on our neighborhood streets that, that's a quick build type project there. So, I mean, there's definitely still, like it still takes time to, get a pilot project like that up and running. Not to mention, like anything that we'd put out there, we'd most likely still have to go through, like bring it here and talk, like introduce it and move it forward in some cases. We'd want to do that just to give you guys that opportunity to see what that is. Not that in some cases we wouldn't have to do that. We could implement them. So the timing of it could be pretty quick. We're, still having, we're still a lot of new staff in transportation when it comes to that. So we're still working through some of those bumps in the road. But yeah, I think we could beat 18 to 24 months.
So I would like to suggest a location that is inaccessible and unsafe and has a project coming up that kind of makes it a little bit urgent, which is 6th Street between V Street and, where the Harley Davidson dealership was, where the new DMV office is going to be. I don't know if you guys saw that planning meeting, but when that became in front of the Planning Commission, I actually walked down there and I made my public comment, my full 3 minutes of walking up 6th Street, which has 0 sidewalks, 0 lighting, is very wide, and is the only legal way to access the new DMV building on foot. So I would really suggest that. They ended up kind of talking about maybe doing some striping or something there, but that's not sufficient. I strongly encourage all of you to go walk 6th Street, from V Street towards, the elections office and the Harley Davidson dealership /DMV, because, like I said, there is no legal way to reach that facility on foot. It's not served by regular transit service. It's only served by the Transit on Demand, which costs, if you're going both ways, $8. I live walking distance from there. I live, around the corner from there. I don't think that I should have to pay $8 to go, a quarter of a mile from my house to renew, my registration or my ID or something. So I would strongly suggest we get working on that right away, because it's going to see, again, an increase in vehicle traffic and an increase in foot traffic, and it has 0 infrastructure if you're trying to walk there. It kind of looks on the map, it looks like you can reach it from the waterfront trail. You would have to either hop a fence or trespass through the Shoreline RV Park to do that. Those are also not very efficient routes. So yeah, key location right there that I think is prime for this.
Which I guess a direct follow-up to that, how do you all decide where, or do you have projects in mind, or how would you go about figuring out where things like this could be utilized?
Where quick builds could be utilized.
Yeah.
I think, we have a lot of ideas about areas, like we mentioned, like C Street, as far as quick build goes, like where it's like you could do something out ahead of a project in order to like start to highlight for the traveling public how things are going to work, without having that full cost of having to install hardscape and that sort of thing. And then you also get the opportunity to play around with it a little bit and understand, if one configuration might work better than another. Again, some of these, there's the neighborhood streets pilot program. It's like trying to open it up for community involvement as to where those things might go, as far as getting input from that standpoint, as far as like trying to have areas where the streets are potentially, neck down, so to speak, to keep traffic from coming in and out of there. I mean, that's one way that we're trying to do it through this commission. And then I think other areas where we get a lot of feedback from the community when it comes to speeding or, different, I guess, driving movements in the city. And we track where we're getting like hot spots, so to speak. And, where do you go look at those hot spots? Then, of course, there's all the normal ways that you would, from a safety standpoint, from a collision standpoint, we have our collision mapping, and we can look at those and make calls off of those where maybe it doesn't quite rise to the level of like where we're going to go try to apply for a highway safety improvement program grant and for like a larger project, but maybe there's like a smaller occurrence that doesn't fit within, where you really need a project to be, like, if you're going after funding like that, you want to have a big enough project to make it worthwhile for managing that level of funding and administration, I guess, from that standpoint, where you can have like one-off projects that maybe don't fit into that big program that you look for. So I think there's a number of ways. Jay, do you have any other ideas there?
Near miss collision reports, daily traffic reports. I have crossroad collisions, and then I also receive feedback, like Jesse was mentioning, daily from the public who gives me hotspots locations.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, Allison.
Yeah. Also wanted a second improvement in any kind of improvement for that 6th Street. I've taken it on my e-scooter. On my e-scooter has been trepidatious. I just, in sort of attached to the question of how you choose these spots, I guess my other question is, at what stage of an idea process do you install these? It sounds like various. I just, I think it's important to notify people, especially key partners in the area. I feel like I would have really liked for people to want bicycle lanes near Washington School, but I feel like people didn't react well to that pop-up, partially because the school district wasn't aware of it. So, I don't want to blindside people with things like that, especially the school district. So just making sure that key partners are aware of things like that. But that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, what have you? There you go. Thank you, Philip. All right. Thanks for that. Cool. Next, we just have subcommittee updates. Anything from the neighborhood street closures group?
We do not have any updates. Kelly, I don't know if you have any updates about neighborhood streets. No updates.
All right. Transportation Safety Action Plan Subcommittee.
Yeah, so there's no updates at this time, but we were talking about in October having a meeting shortly after that, and we're, I believe, advised to hold off for some report that was coming up. So I'm curious as to when that report would be coming up, or if I should just move forward and schedule something.
So we have we are a part of a project with HCOG. It's a Safe Streets for All project that is, it's a regional project that's going to get at many of the things that we were looking at, considering with the Transportation Safety Action Plan and or a Vision Zero plan. Jade, you want to kind of speak to that?
Yeah, so last year, HCOG received the Safe Streets for All grant, which was one of the grants that we were going to try to go after in March. But we spoke with them, and they're doing an extensive overhaul of their Vision Zero for the whole entire county, which is going to include Eureka. So we had to take a step back and see what the next approach we want to do, whether go with our traffic safety action plan and commit and just try to recreate the traffic safety action plan and let the county work on overall overhaul of the Vision Zero. And so those are just the things that we need to discuss over the next week, and we can bring back to the table for the next meeting when we have more information on it.
Okay. So we're trying to figure out how to best use city staff time, right?
Yeah, I think we went in regionally with HCOG because that's a good way for us as a region, as local agencies, to be able to kind of leverage our local transportation planning agency and the dollars that we can get through that, and be able to have, having help take on a lift like that. So we were talking earlier, October, September, about, taking on one of these grants ourselves. We're already a part of this, and we had the dollars are there. So I think at this point we should, go through that process and be able to leverage that staff time that we're getting from HCOG, as well as, them manage, because they're going to manage the consultant who's going to take the region through that process, that Vision Zero process. And then we'll have that as a document that we can, use in a similar way to what we were intending, pretty much the same way, as far as like Vision Zero traffic safety action plan.
Sounds like we should put the committee on hold for the moment.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Keep us posted. Thank you.
Then we just have a couple of future agenda items. On-street parking meter pilot program and the parking permit pilot program will be coming back to us at some point. parking permit pilot program. Yeah. Yeah. And then, yeah, I think that's everything that's on our agenda, y'all. Should we adjourn until
Move
December?
to adjourn.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.